Welcome to On Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton, your host, joined by Gerry Hamilton, ontexasfootball.com recruiting expert extraordinaire. Gerry on the road today. The Longhorns getting some bad news, though that's why we're breaking in with a special update here today for On Texas Football. The Longhorns losing defensive back Cade Phillips, the Fort Bend Hightower star, who has been committed to Texas, Gerry, for a little over a month now. Decommits from Texas and instead flips to LSU. Big pickup for the Tigers, big loss for the Longhorns. Cade Phillips, the only safety currently committed to the University of Texas. Tell us what happened, what it means for the Texas class.
Yeah, I think the other thing is the main thing with his recruitment was he wants a chance to play corner, right? And he really
you talked about that. You talked about that before he even committed to Texas.
Yep, and he wanted a chance to play corner at Texas, and LSU has been recruiting him at corner the whole time, as well as a couple other programs. And I think that was big for him. He had such a liking for Texas. His family had such a liking for the University of Texas. Got to remember, his older brother went to Texas A&M, had a devastating knee injury. That athletic, academic component, very much what the family liked about the University of Texas. I think at the end of the day with Cade, though, he really believes LSU is going to give him the best chance to be a corner. That's what he wants to play. And I think Texas did a good job getting over that hurdle initially. Blake Gideon recruits to school, was the lead recruiter. Terry Joseph a little bit involved in that recruitment. But I think at the end of the day, Cade Phillips feels comfortable at LSU with his chance to play corner for sure. And we'll see what happens with him long-term as a prospect. We both love him as a prospect. We're not sure he's a corner if he ends up at safety, but that's what he wants to play as corner. And I think over time, I think that kind of chipped away at him a little bit, and he decided to make the change.
Yeah, Gerry, I look at it, and it's kind of interesting because we thought those problems and those questions had been assuaged. We thought that Texas was in the clear on this. Otherwise, he wouldn't have committed the first time around. Do you know what happened in the interim that made him go back and think twice, or just a situation where he kept feeling more and more comfortable with LSU?
Well, I'll tell you what's interesting is, so I was there, a couple of weeks ago for a morning practice. We showed a video of him during the coffee and football. He was wearing an LSU shirt again. And I thought that was interesting because that stuff normally happens before you commit somewhere. And then after you commit, you don't really wear the other gear as much. And I kind of walked away, and I think I mentioned something to you that day. I was like, that was interesting. When you've been doing this a long time, you pick up the little things, right? But I just think, look, I think he wondered if Texas was actually going to give him a real shot at corner long-term. Caleb Chester, corners committed in the class from Fort Bend Marshall. Texas is right there in it for Aiden Anding, who Texas likes at corner out of Ruston, Louisiana. So on the surface there, that feels like an eventual move to safety, I think, to Cade Phillips. And then, as a defensive back recruit, what happens then if Jonah Williams picks Texas on the 24th? And we're not saying he is, but the what if game in recruiting. And LSU has two safeties committed in this class already. They have one corner, DJ Pickett, who's ranked as the number 1 or 2 safety in America. So LSU's told him he'll get a chance at corner, but they don't really have a true corner in the class at LSU.
So, Gerry, what does this do to the University of Texas now at 16 verbal commitments in the secondary? You mentioned the continued recruitment of Aiden Anding out of Ruston, Louisiana. But really, there aren't that many more guys in the secondary right now that Texas is hot after, at least based on what I can see. You mentioned Jonah Williams is a big one. Obviously, Anding is as well. What are your thoughts?
I think Texas will evaluate guys as seniors. I expect them to probably offer a guy or two that hasn't been offered to this point. I sound like a broken record, but Xavier Filsaime did not have an offer this time a year ago. And when Texas needed a safety, they came in on him his senior season. He got offered the day he went to the Cotton Bowl for the Texas OU game, and he ended up flipping from Florida into Texas class. I think you're going to see something similar to that at cornerback. in this class. We've seen this with defensive line, Bobby, in the last few days here. Kenny Baker offers a couple of kids out of the state of Georgia, committed to Florida, committed to Arkansas, high-level SEC players. Texas coming in and offer those guys at defensive line. I think you're going to see something similar at corner.
All right. I'm talking to Gerry Hamilton here about the decommitment and flip of Cade Phillips from the University of Texas to LSU.
I also want to point out that doesn't mean Texas is still going to stay in contact with a Devin Sanchez or Dorian Brew and see what happens. Because if we know one thing about Steve Sarkisian, they don't back off their A-list of targets. But what they will try to do is find another A-list guy.
Right. That makes total sense. Gerry, we look at it, and the other thing that I think is interesting here, we thought Texas had made some headway in the Fort Bend area down in Houston with the addition not only of Cade Phillips, but also Caleb Chester. Now, does that look somewhat sullied a little bit by the loss of Cade Phillips? An area down there in Fort Bend that is very prodigious, puts out a lot of highly ranked players, and Texas has not done well in the past decade or two.
Yeah, I think as long as Caleb Chester's in the boat at Marshall, that's a big deal. 2026 safety Isaiah Williams. And I'm the first to say these recruitments are all independent of each other, but on some level it still matters, right? The momentum and recruiting strong in areas, it does still matter, but they are individual recruitments more than ever. But Isaiah Williams, one of the top safeties in the country in 2026 at Fort Bend Marshall. There's a linebacker that's Noriel Dominguez, who's one of the top inside backers in the country. There's three schools that really are producing the talent in Missouri City right now. It's Marshall, it's Ridge Point, and it's Hightower. Ridge Point, I think there'll be some kids Texas will offer there in the future. A bunch of NFL, ex-pro athletes, NFL players live in Siena. Sean Rogers, whose daughter goes to Ridge Point's playing at volleyball at SMU. Ndukwe Kalu from Rice and in the Texans. His son plays at Baylor D-line. There's been a lot of guys come through that are sons of pro athletes, really good athletes at Ridge Point High. So I think those three schools are the big talent producers. I don't think it hurts Texas necessarily because Cade Phillips has made a decision. I'm going to the place where I think I have the best chance to truly play corner. And so it's not a negative on a Texas thing necessarily. It's just I just want to play. I just think I want to go somewhere I have a best chance to play corner and not get moved to safety. In his mind, whether it happens or not, that's going to be proven out in time.
It's a big loss for the Longhorns overall. It really is, because this is a guy, 24-foot long jumper, 200 meter qualifier for the state meet, big, long, and can really run. Gerry, is this LSU trying to get underneath the Steve Sarkisian, Blake Gideon, and Terry Joseph's skin a little bit here? It sure feels like LSU's playing the foil a little bit, not only now with Cade Phillips, but also Zion Williams up at Lufkin, as well as Brandon Brown in O'Galley, Florida. Bo Davis has kind of poked the bear a little bit too here. Is that what you're seeing right now?
Well, I definitely think the A&M, LSU, Texas battles in Houston are something to watch in the future. I mean, LSU's kind of got their Houston recruiting staff back together again. I mean, Corey Raymond, Bo Davis, who'd never been there. I say back together again, but Corey Raymond and Frank Wilson back together again, right? And Frank was the head coach at UTSA. He can recruit a little bit in Houston as well. But they've kind of got a Houston vibe on their staff. And D coordinator Baker is from the Houston area as well. They have a real Houston vibe on that recruiting staff. Brian Kelly's actually put together some guys that can recruit the Houston area and give A&M and Texas some issues. I think it's just going to intensify the battles because A&M's trying to plant a flag every year in the Houston area. And Steve Sarkisian's made it kind of a point to be stronger in Houston after A&M kind of ran the table in that 2022 class. DFW extremely important to Texas, but you have to be very competitive in the Houston area as well. So with the staff that Brian Kelly's put together now at LSU, Mike Elko coming into A&M, and Sarkisian putting more emphasis in Houston, those are some real battles coming in future years in the Houston area.
Okay. All right. That's going to do it again. Breaking in with a little bit of bad news here. Cade Phillips decommits from the University of Texas, the defensive back out of Fort Bend Hightower High School. Thanks, Jerry, for your color commentary there. We'll get back to you guys with more later today on Texas football. Hook 'em.